Welcome to Wiki History, where we uncover the pivotal moments that shaped our world. Today, we're diving into the legendary Battle of Hastings, a single day that forever reshaped the destiny of England. If you're fascinated by the dramatic turning points of history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Wiki History for more incredible journeys into the past. Now, let's journey back to the year 1066 and witness the clash that changed everything. The Battle of Hastings, a pivotal clash, was fought on the 14th of October, 1066. It pitted the Norman-French army of William, Duke of Normandy, against an English army led by the Anglo-Saxon King Harold Godwinson, marking the beginning of the Norman conquest of England. This decisive Norman victory took place approximately 7 miles northwest of Hastings, near the modern-day town of Battle in East Sussex. The conflict arose from the death of the childless King Edward the Confessor in January of that same year, triggering a fierce struggle for the throne among several claimants. Harold was crowned king soon after Edward's passing, but his reign was immediately challenged. He faced invasions from William, his own brother Tostig, and the formidable Norwegian King Harald Hardrada, also known as Harold III of Norway. Hardrada and Tostig initially defeated a hastily assembled English army at the Battle of Fulford on the 20th of September, 1066. However, just 5 days later, on the 25th of September, Harold decisively defeated them at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. The deaths of Tostig and Hardrada at Stamford Bridge left William as Harold's sole major adversary. While Harold and his forces were recovering from the northern campaigns, William seized his opportunity. He landed his invasion forces in the south of England at Pevensey on the 28th of September, 1066, swiftly establishing a beachhead for his conquest of the kingdom. This forced Harold to undertake a rapid march south, gathering additional forces as he went to confront the new threat. The stage was now set for the ultimate confrontation that would decide England's fate. The exact numbers of soldiers at the Battle of Hastings remain unknown, with modern estimates varying widely. However, the composition of the forces is clearer. The English army consisted almost entirely of infantry with very few archers. In contrast, only about half of the invading Norman force was infantry, with the remainder split equally between cavalry and archers. Harold seemingly attempted to surprise William, but Norman scouts discovered his army and reported its arrival. William then marched from Hastings to the battlefield to confront Harold. The battle raged from approximately 9 in the morning until dusk. Initial Norman attempts to break the English battle lines proved largely ineffective. In response, the Normans adopted a cunning tactic, pretending to flee in panic, then turning to attack their pursuers. Harold's death, likely occurring near the battle's end, triggered the retreat and ultimate defeat of most of his army. After further marches and skirmishes, William was crowned King of England on Christmas Day, 1066. Although resistance to William's rule continued, Hastings effectively marked the culmination of his conquest. Casualty figures for the battle are difficult to assess, but some historians estimate that 2,000 invaders died, along with about twice that number of Englishmen. William later founded a monastery at the battle site, with the high altar of the abbey church supposedly placed at the very spot where Harold died. This act solidified the Norman victory and served as a lasting monument to the pivotal event. To understand the Battle of Hastings, we must first look back to the year 911. The Carolingian ruler Charles the Simple allowed a group of Vikings, led by Rollo, to settle in Normandy. This settlement thrived, with the Vikings quickly adapting to the local culture, converting to Christianity and intermarrying. Over time, the duchy's borders expanded. In the year 1002, King Ethelred II married Emma, the sister of Richard II, Duke of Normandy. Their son, Edward the Confessor, spent many years in Norman exile. Edward the Confessor succeeded to the English throne in the year 1042. His long exile in Normandy led to a powerful Norman influence in English politics. Edward heavily relied on his former hosts for support, bringing Norman courtiers, soldiers, and clerics into England, and appointing them to positions of power, especially within the church. Childless and embroiled in conflict with the formidable Godwin, Earl of Wessex, and his sons, Edward may have even encouraged Duke William of Normandy's ambitions for the English throne, setting the stage for future conflict. King Edward's death on the 5th of January, 1066, left no clear heir, plunging England into a succession crisis. Several contenders immediately laid claim to the throne. Edward's immediate successor was Harold Godwinson, the Earl of Wessex, who was the wealthiest and most powerful of the English aristocrats, and the son of Edward's former opponent, Godwin. Harold was elected king by the Witnagemot of England and crowned by Ealdred, the Archbishop of York. Harold's claim was immediately challenged by two powerful neighboring rulers. William, Duke of Normandy, asserted that King Edward had promised him the throne, and that Harold himself had sworn an oath agreeing to this. Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway, also contested the succession. His claim was based on an earlier agreement between his predecessor, Magnus the Good, and the former English King Harthacnut, stipulating that if either died without an heir, the other would inherit both England and Norway. Both William and Harald Hardrada immediately began assembling troops and ships for separate invasions. In early 1066, Harold's exiled brother, Tostig Godwinson, launched raids on southeastern England with a fleet he had recruited in Flanders, later joined by ships from Orkney. Threatened by Harold's own fleet, Tostig moved north, raiding East Anglia and Lincolnshire. He was eventually driven back to his ships by the brothers Edwin, Earl of Mercia, and Morcar, Earl of Northumbria. Deserted by most of his followers, Tostig withdrew to Scotland, where he spent the middle of the year recruiting fresh forces, preparing for another attempt. Harald Hardrada invaded northern England in early September, leading a massive fleet of more than 300 ships, carrying perhaps 15,000 men. Hardrada's army was further augmented by the forces of Tostig, who now supported the Norwegian king's bid for the throne. Advancing on York, the Norwegians occupied the city after decisively defeating a northern English army under Edwin and Morcar on the 20th of September at the Battle of Fulford. This victory opened the path to York for the invaders. The English army was organized regionally, primarily through the Fyrd, or local levy. These were landowning men, equipped by their communities to meet the king's military demands, serving under local magnates like earls, bishops, or sheriffs. For every 5 hides of land, 1 man was expected to serve. England could raise about 14,000 men for the Fyrd, who typically served for 2 months, except in emergencies. The king also maintained personal armsmen, known as housecarls, who formed the elite backbone of the royal forces. Both the Fyrd and housecarls fought on foot, with housecarls distinguished by their superior armor. The English army notably lacked a significant number of archers. Harold had spent mid-1066 on the south coast with a large army and fleet, anticipating William's invasion. However, the bulk of his forces were militia who needed to harvest their crops, so on the 8th of September, Harold dismissed them and the fleet. Learning of the Norwegian invasion, he swiftly rushed north, gathering forces as he went. He took the Norwegians by surprise, decisively defeating them at the Battle of Stamford Bridge on the 25th of September. Harald Hardrada and Tostig were killed, and the Norwegians suffered such immense losses that only 24 of their original 300 ships were needed to carry away the survivors. William spent almost 9 months meticulously assembling a vast invasion fleet and an army drawn from Normandy and across France, including large contingents from Brittany and Flanders. Some Norman chronicles claim he secured diplomatic support, even a papal banner from Pope Alexander II, though this is debated. In April of 1066, Halley's comet famously appeared in the sky, widely reported across Europe. Contemporary accounts linked this celestial event to the unfolding succession crisis in England, seen by many as an omen. William mustered his forces at St. Valery-sur-Somme, ready to cross the English Channel by about the 12th of August. The crossing was delayed, either by unfavorable weather or to avoid interception by the powerful English fleet. The Normans finally crossed to England a few days after Harold's victory over the Norwegians, following the dispersal of Harold's naval force. They landed at Pevensey in Sussex on the 28th of September. After landing, William's forces immediately built a wooden castle at Hastings, from which they raided the surrounding area, and erected more fortifications at Pevensey. The precise numbers and composition of William's force at Hastings remain uncertain, with contemporary accounts often exaggerated. Modern historians estimate William's army to be between 7,000 and 12,000 men. The army was roughly half infantry, 1/4 cavalry, and 1/4 archers or crossbowmen. Their main armor consisted of knee-length chainmail hauberks, often with slits for riding, and conical metal helmets with nasal guards. Cavalry typically carried kite-shaped shields and lances, while infantry used round wooden shields. Both infantry and cavalry commonly fought with long, double-edged swords, with infantry also using javelins and spears. After his victory against Tostig and Harold Hardrada in the north, Harold left a significant portion of his forces, including Morcar and Edwin, behind. He then swiftly marched the remainder of his army south to confront the looming Norman invasion. It is unclear precisely when Harold learned of William's landing, but it was likely during this arduous march. Harold paused in London for about a week before Hastings, meaning his march south covered approximately 200 miles, averaging about 27 miles per day. Harold camped at Caldbeck Hill on the night of the 13th of October, near a hoarapple tree, about 8 miles from William's castle at Hastings. Although Harold attempted to surprise the Normans, William's scouts reported the English army's arrival to the Duke. While the exact events preceding the battle are somewhat obscure due to contradictory accounts, all sources agree that William's army advanced from his castle towards the enemy. Harold had taken a strong defensive position at the top of Senlac Hill, now known as Battle, East Sussex, about 6 miles from William's castle. The exact number of soldiers in Harold's army at Hastings is unknown, with contemporary records being unreliable. Modern historians generally estimate between 7,000 and 8,000 English troops, a mix of the professional housecarls and the local Fiad. The English army consisted entirely of infantry. While some higher-class members may have ridden to the battle, they dismounted to fight on foot. The core of the army, the housecarls, were full-time professional soldiers, well-armored with conical helmets, mail hauberks, and shields, often wielding the formidable two-handed Danish battle-axe. The less armored Fiad formed the bulk of the forces. Due to contradictory primary accounts, an authoritative description of the Battle of Hastings is impossible. However, it is undisputed that fighting began at 9 in the morning on Saturday, the 14th of October, 1066, and lasted until dusk. The battle took place 7 miles north of Hastings, at the present-day town of Battle, situated between Caldbeck Hill to the north and Telham Hill to the south. The area was heavily wooded with nearby marshland. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle referred to it as the battle at the hoary apple tree, while later chroniclers called it Senlac. Harold's forces deployed in a small, dense formation atop a steep slope, their flanks naturally protected by woods and marshy ground. The English formed their renowned shield wall, with the front ranks holding their shields tightly together, even overlapping, to create an impenetrable barrier against attack. While sources differ on the exact fighting site, some suggesting the Abbey site and newer ones pointing to Caldbeck Hill, the defensive strength of their position was paramount. More is known about the Norman deployment. William arranged his forces into three main groups or battles, corresponding to their origins. The left wing comprised Bretons and men from Anjou, Poitou, and Maine, led by Alan the Red. The center was held by the Normans themselves, under William's direct command, surrounded by his relatives. The right wing consisted of Frenchmen, Picardy, Boulogne, and Flanders, commanded by William Fitz-Osbern and Count Eustace II of Boulogne. William's strategy was clear. Archers would open the battle, followed by infantry to create openings, which cavalry would then exploit to break through the English lines. The battle commenced with Norman archers firing uphill at the English shield wall, but with little effect. The steep angle caused arrows to either bounce off shields or fly harmlessly over the hill. The absence of English archers also meant few arrows could be collected and reused by the Normans. Following the archer attack, William sent his spearmen forward. They were met with a fierce barrage of spears, axes, and stones. The infantry failed to breach the shield wall, and even the supporting cavalry could not make headway. A general Norman retreat began, attributed to the Breton division on William's left flank. A rumor quickly spread that William had been killed, adding to the confusion. Seeing this, English forces began to pursue the seemingly fleeing invaders. However, William, very much alive, rode through his forces, showing his face and yelling to rally his men. He then led a swift counterattack against the pursuing English, overwhelming some who had rallied on a small hillock. It is debated whether this English pursuit was ordered by Harold, or was a spontaneous, undisciplined action. A lull likely occurred early in the afternoon, allowing for rest and a strategic reassessment. William may have used this time to implement a new strategy, possibly inspired by the earlier English pursuit. The idea was to send cavalry against the shield wall, then feign flight, drawing the English into further pursuits, hoping to create exploitable breaks in their lines. William of Poitiers states this tactic was used twice. While some argue it was an excuse for Norman retreats, most historians agree that feigned flights were indeed employed by the Normans at Hastings. Although the feigned flights did not immediately shatter the English lines, they likely thinned out the elite housecarls in the shield wall. As housecarls fell, they were replaced by less armored members of the Field, yet the shield wall remarkably held. Norman archers were again employed, both before and during renewed assaults by cavalry and infantry led by William. It is not known how many assaults were launched against the English lines, but various sources record intense actions by both sides throughout the afternoon's brutal fighting. King Harold appears to have died late in the battle, though accounts of his death are contradictory. William of Poitiers simply mentions his death without details. The Bayeux tapestry depicts a figure with an arrow in his eye next to a falling fighter struck by a sword, with the caption, "Here King Harold has been killed," leaving ambiguity. The earliest written mention of the arrow to the eye account dates to the 1080s. Modern historians, after reviewing various accounts, conclude that it is not possible to definitively declare how Harold died, though an arrow to the eye remains the most popular theory. Harold's death left the English forces leaderless, causing them to rapidly collapse. Many fled, but the loyal soldiers of the royal household gathered around Harold's body, fighting valiantly to the very end. The Normans then began a relentless pursuit of the fleeing English troops. The battle concluded with a final rearguard action at a site known as the Malfosse, or Evil Ditch. Here, a small group of Englishmen rallied in a fortification or trenches, seriously wounding Eustace of Boulogne before finally being defeated by the Normans, marking the end of the day's fighting. Harold's defeat was likely due to a combination of factors. The necessity of defending against two nearly simultaneous invasions stretched his resources. His dismissal of forces in southern England on the 8th of September also weakened his position. Many historians criticize Harold for rushing south without gathering more troops, though his army's endurance throughout the day-long battle suggests they weren't exhausted by the march. It's also possible Harold didn't trust Edwin and Morcar after Tostig's defeat, choosing not to bring their forces south. Modern historians suggest Harold's haste aimed to contain William's destructive raids and prevent him from expanding his beachhead. Ultimately, most of the blame for the defeat lies in the battle's events. William was the more experienced military leader, and the English army's lack of cavalry severely limited Harold's tactical options. Some critics argue Harold failed to exploit the opportunity presented by the rumor of William's early death. The English erred by not maintaining a strict defensive posture. Their pursuit of the retreating Normans exposed their flanks to devastating counterattacks. Whether this was due to inexperienced commanders or undisciplined soldiers remains unclear. Harold's death proved decisive, signaling the complete collapse of the English forces. The day after the battle, Harold's body was identified, either by his armor or distinct body marks. His personal standard was presented to William and later sent to the papacy. The bodies of the English dead, including Harold's brothers and housecarls, were left on the battlefield, though some were later retrieved by relatives. The Norman dead were buried in a large communal grave, which remains undiscovered. Casualty figures are unknown, but some historians estimate around 2,000 Normans and 4,000 Englishmen were killed. Legends persist about Harold's fate, including his mother offering gold for his body, William ordering it thrown into the sea, or his secret burial at Waltham Abbey. William expected the submission of surviving English leaders after Hastings, but instead, Edgar Atheling was proclaimed king by the Witnagemot, supported by Earls Edwin and Morcar, and Archbishops Stigand and Ealdred. William therefore advanced on London, marching around the coast of Kent. He defeated an English force at Southwark but couldn't storm London Bridge, forcing a more circuitous route. He moved up the Thames Valley, crossing at Wallingford, where he received Stigand's submission. English leaders finally surrendered to William at Berkhamsted, Hertfordshire. William was acclaimed King of England and crowned by Ealdred on Christmas Day, 1066, in Westminster Abbey. Despite the submission of English nobles, resistance to William's rule persisted for several years. Rebellions erupted in Exeter in late 1067, Harold's sons invaded in mid-1068, and an uprising occurred in Northumbria that same year. In 1069, William faced more Northumbrian rebels, an invading Danish fleet, and further rebellions across southern and western England. He ruthlessly suppressed these risings, culminating in the devastating harrying of the North in late 1069 and early 1070, which laid waste to parts of northern England. Battle Abbey was founded by William at the site of the battle. According to 12th-century sources, William vowed to found the abbey, with the high altar placed where Harold died, though it was more likely imposed by papal legates in 1070. The battlefield's topography has been altered by the abbey's construction. Today, the battlefield and abbey grounds are owned and administered by English Heritage and are open to the public. The Bayeux Tapestry, an embroidered narrative of events leading to Hastings, was likely commissioned by Odo of Bayeux soon after the battle, serving as a vital historical record. In modern times, annual reenactments of the Battle of Hastings draw thousands of participants and spectators to the original site. Interestingly, Some English veterans of the battle left England after the conquest and joined the Varangian Guard in Constantinople. They would later fight the Normans again at the Battle of Dyrrhachium in 1081, and were, remarkably, defeated again in similar circumstances, a poignant echo of their original defeat.